Toronto Blue Jays fans, you're welcome.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am a baseball podcaster and have been doing it for well over a decade now. I've done a lot of stuff, but I love doing my podcasting. And this is now my sixth full season here as a member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully with Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you're going to post on any of the social media sites, please put that hashtag Everyday Sully so we have an idea of who is following us. It actually kind of helps. And also, quick little reminder that today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to go over a couple things. Some of the teams, it was a strange night of baseball on Tuesday because it's funny when I start prepping what I'm going to talk about on the show, especially during the season. A lot of times you see that there are games that are going on and you're thinking, oh, if this game goes by the way, if it goes to the logical conclusion, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that. And I actually had a funny blurb to say at the front of today's episode. And then a couple of teams collapsed. In the same game, both the Guardians and the Red Sox collapsed in the same game. The Red Sox out-collapsed the Guardians. Meanwhile, I had a whole thing that I was going to do on the Angels because the Angels, 3 times, I think, in the same game, were on the verge of winning against Tampa. And if they did win, they would move into first place by themselves. Yes, I know it's ridiculously early. And I said over and over again, you can't really look at the standings and things like that until pretty much Memorial Day. Once we start getting into June, then you can start looking at the standings. But I felt it was critical for the Angels, with the gut punch that they had in the offseason and everything going wrong with the Angels, to get off to a good start. If they could look up and go like, we're in first place. I had a whole thing I was going to say about that. And what did they do? They kept collapsing and kept collapsing and kept collapsing. I can't tell you how much I hate the runner on second. I mean, my great compromise is this. I don't like it. If we have to have it, start at the 13th inning. Let's at least have a couple innings of actual baseball and extra innings. I can't stand it because I still instinctively go like, oh, how'd they get the guy in second? Oh, yeah, Manfred. I'm fine with a tie after 12, but if you don't like a tie after 12, then we'll do the Manfred man after 12. But to me, it just doesn't feel real. But I'm not convinced the Rays-Angels game is over. The Rays wound up winning that, and the Angels will, they're playing in that AL West, which is just, quite frankly, not that great. Well, a few days ago, I did a whole podcast about how I felt John Schneider was not the guy for Toronto, hasn't been for over a year. I don't understand why he's still there. They should get rid of him. And a couple of people were like, it's too early to be doing that sort of stuff. And I said, no, it's not. We've had over a year. He's not the man for the job. They lost a brutal extra inning game to Seattle. They lost that game against Colorado. And I said, there's too much talent in this team. It's too important a team. And here you go. Well, guess what, Toronto Blue Jays fans? Your team hasn't lost since I did that. They wound up winning the final 2 games against Colorado, which, big deal, Colorado. No, it is a big deal. You have to win the games you're supposed to win. And if you lose the first game of a series and wind up winning that series, do you know what? That shows some guts and some character. And bless the Blue Jays for they won a tight game on Saturday. They shut them out on Sunday. Then they went to the red hot Yankees. And Bassett was terrific on the Monday game. And today, the Blue Jays won once again. Kikuchi pitched well. Romano got the save. It was a close game. The Yankees rallied to make it interesting, but in the end, the Jays won the game. Guerrero got the 2-run single. Kikuchi was very good, striking out 9 in 6 innings, making you think, oh, wait a minute. Is Kikuchi going to be actually good this year? It appears that seems to be the case. So you're welcome, Blue Jay fans. You're welcome. We're also seeing that some of the teams that, are been predicted by lots of people to do very well are starting to right the ship and, start playing the way we're all expecting them to play. The Yankees got off that fantastic start where they won 10 of their first 12 games. And right now, they're only a half a game ahead of the Orioles. By the time we meet here tomorrow, the Orioles could be in first place by themselves. And Rodriguez won today in the game against Minnesota. Not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. This is Rodriguez's 3rd win of the year. And you see that Henderson went 3 for 5. O'Hearn went 2 for 5. Santander went 2 for 4. Cowser got a couple of hits. Westbrook got a couple of hits. McCann got a couple of hits. The offense is firing on all cylinders, making you think, oh, wow, everyone's pick of the Orioles is looking pretty dang good. Also, the Phillies, again, they're playing the Rockies, but you got to win these games. You got to beat up the bad teams. And one of the things that's really encouraging for Philadelphia is that rotation is starting to look like the way we thought it was going to look. The other day, you had a terrific start from Nola, and today you got Suarez throwing a complete game. And this is what you want if you're the Phillies. You want solid pitching. You want to beat up the teams you're supposed to beat up, and they're climbing up and righting their ship as well. Also, it's funny, the Ohtani scandal and everything seems so far away, doesn't it? It's going to be totally forgotten pretty soon. And while it got me a little bit of attention, I'd much rather be talking about baseball. And the Dodgers wound up winning. They lost the other day, but they won today. They righted their ship today, 6-2 victory over the Washington Nationals. And Mookie Betts, 5 hits and played 2 infield positions. Why can't the Red Sox find players like him? And Yarbrough pitched well out of the bullpen, and Kike Hernandez got a home run. Why can't the Red Sox find players like Kike Hernandez? Teoscar Hernandez is having a ton of fun because he doesn't have to be a big star anymore. And so there you go. By the way, have you also noticed the Mets are playing well? The Mets have played well against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they're starting to dust themselves off a little bit too. I'm not going crazy, but I am just saying. Well, by the way, the trivia question yesterday, a couple of you got it right. And Court Stell got it right, saying if Bruce Bochy wins one more World Series, what Hall of Famer would he wind up tying? And Court Stell got it right. It was Connie Mack. He would tie Connie Mack. Connie Mack managed I think he's still managing, even though he died in the mid-50s. He managed for a very long time. Oh, I want to bring one other thing up, and I'll post, Rome Loves Dan, who is a listener, said, even New Yorkers enjoyed Sterling as he did the Braves game, starting with the first season they put together in 1982. I did my thing the other day about John Sterling, and Rome Loves Dan reminded me of the first memory I had of John Sterling, not even realizing it was John Sterling, is his call of the Rick Camp home run. For those of you who don't remember the Rick Camp home run, the Mets and the Braves were playing a game on the 4th of July in 1985. And it was a weird, bonkers game. A few years ago, Braves superstar Dale Murphy was a guest on the show, and he talked about what a weird, crazy game that was. And it was deep. It was like 16, 17. It's way deep. And there had been rain delays. It was super late. It was the 4th of July, and they had a whole 4th of July fireworks celebration that they were going to play after the game. And the game just kept going on and on and on. And finally, with Garman on the mound for the Mets, the Braves ran out of pinch hitters, And Rick Camp, who's normally a starting pitcher, who came in out of the bullpen, had to bat for himself with 2 outs in the bottom of the 16th, 17th, whatever inning it was. And Rick Camp was notorious for being a terrible hitting pitcher, even amongst pitchers who tend to be terrible hitters. And John Sterling was the announcer of the Braves. And he said something to the line of, if he hits a home run, that this will be the most certified craziest game of all time. And Rick Camp hit a home run to tie the game. And go look it up on YouTube. Just hearing John Sterling yelling, Rick Camp, this is positively the nuttiest, the craziest game in baseball history. It's a phenomenal call. Even if you're not a John Sterling fan, you cannot deny that that is one of the most wildest, weirdest moments you'll ever see in a baseball game, which we can't have right now because God forbid we have pitchers hit. But there you go. So you were right. The trivia question, of course, was about one manager, Bruce Bochy, and another Hall of Fame manager in Connie Mack. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fact that we lost one of the great managers in the history of baseball, and someone who had, well, let's face it, a truly unbelievably deep impact on how we follow games from the 1980s. Let's talk about our friends from PrizePicks. PrizePicks, which is an app that I actually have on my phone right now. Now look it. If you are into daily fantasy baseball, then this PrizePicks is the place for you. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million followers. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get into the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more than or less than on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Now, PrizePicks is the best way to get on the action in more than 30 states across the country, including Texas, Georgia, or right here in California. And cash withdrawals and easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 fantasy app. So I'm going to go to my PrizePicks app right here. Got it right there. And who am I going to go for? I'm going for in baseball. So I'm going to go more than for Mookie Betts. And in terms of runs, and you know what? I'm going to be brave and say less than for Freddie Freeman. You know what? I think he's not going to cover it. But there you go. Let's see if I get the money come falling in with my fabulous picks. And you want to get in on playoff action in basketball and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, download the app, use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. Do you know what? It's just that easy. Let's go from one game to another. And let me tell you something. I have a bit of a competitive streak, but I am on the leaderboard. Listen up. I've been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I'm finally on top. That's right. I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You've probably heard about it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, not by me. I just did it once. And it's a great twist on the classic Monopoly game that you can play anywhere, anytime. You can explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, Moonopoly, while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friend rent, and they can go after Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. It's Monopoly meets Ocean's 11. But my favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself onto the charts, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and on Google Play. NFL draft is coming up, and now it is Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th. That's today at 7 Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 7th, 7 Eastern Time, to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every single NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts. You even get the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is on April 17th at 7 Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. I'll tell you something, my in memoriam video is already coming together for next year. We've already had Larry Lucchino. We've already had Ken Holtzman. I did my honoring of Arthur D'Angelo the other day. And today we lost Whitey Herzog. And Whitey Herzog has been a huge part in my baseball watching ever since I was brand new to the game, because he was the manager of the Kansas City Royals when the Royals were a powerhouse. And those great Yankee Royals series of the late 70s was basically twice it was Billy Martin versus Whitey Herzog. Could you imagine the profanity being said there? Herzog was this great baseball lifer who was an okay player, but he said his career really took off when he stopped playing. He was part of the Mets farm system when they created their World Series champion. He bounced around for a couple of teams as a manager, California, Texas, before landing in Kansas City, where they finally gave Kansas City a winner. After all the years when the A's were there, and the A's were basically a farm team for the Yankees, or being run oddly by Charlie Finley, and they took off just after just before they got great. The Royals, who were the consolation prize for when the A's left, put together a great team and handed the reins over to Whitey Herzog. And back-to-back years, they were on the verge of going to the World Series. In fact, they were 3 outs away from going to the World Series in '77, and it was tied in the do-or-die game of '76, which Chambliss hit his famous home run. Now, Herzog was a bit of a tempestuous person, and he clashed a little bit with Royals management for leaving and suddenly becoming the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. And the brand of Whitey Herzog ball that was played in the 1980s, to me, will always be the National League brand of ball. You could be nostalgic for all sorts of things. We're going to talk a little bit about connections to the past for the other person who died today. But my nostalgia of baseball includes cookie cutter parks, includes multi-purpose stadium, includes AstroTurf, because that was the brand of baseball that was played when I was in my formative years. And National League teams had so many of those cookie cutter parks, whether it was, the Astrodome was that way, Riverfront, Three Rivers, Busch Stadium, Veteran Stadium. Yeah, they were hard to tell which one was which when you're watching it. But Whitey Herzog figured out how to turn those types of parks to his advantage. He was the architect, as Ozzie Smith called him, of the great Cardinal teams of the 1980s, of which they were built around the AstroTurf. He didn't want to have a lot of sluggers on that. He wanted to have jackrabbits on that team. Friend of the podcast, Lonnie Smith, was acquired from Philadelphia to be on that team. You had the likes of Willie McGee and Vince Coleman, of course, Ozzie Smith. There were so many people on those teams some of them were really patient hitters. He understood the importance of on-base percentage before it became in vogue. Willie McGee wasn't exactly an on-base percentage patient hitter, but he would win batting titles. But he knew the key was to get people on base who would be disruptive, constantly stealing bases, constantly getting the defense on their heels. He would have 1 or 2 sluggers in the team. He would have a Keith Hernandez. He would have a Jack Clark or someone like that. But he would not be worried about trying to slug homers. He was worried about having people on base, stealing bases, and taking advantage of a ball when it went into the gap or a grounder past the second baseman that was going to fly on that AstroTurf. That artificial turf meant it was going to roll and bounce all the way to the wall. And it was best to have someone who could go first to third on a single or score from first on a double. Now, sometimes that led to not exactly the most inspired brand of baseball. Someone would walk, steal second, be bunted over to third, score on a fly ball. Was that always the most exciting thing in the world? Maybe for those who just love the big power game, you would prefer to see big power. But he understood the importance of chaos on the field. And we haven't really seen that on a team with the exception of the Kansas City Royals when they won the pennant in 14 and 15, winning the World Series in 15, played that brand of baseball. And I'll tell you something, I saw a lot of games like that. I saw the Cardinals play in the playoffs against the Giants in 1987, the year they went to the World Series. They went to Game 7 of the World Series. And it made it exciting whenever anyone was on base. There was something disruptive when they were on base. And the fact that that chaos is there, then that just shows that he understood this was the hand I was dealt. Big fences on those cookie cutter parks, artificial turf. Let's build the team around that. And you can't argue with the results. There was no great dynasty of the 80s, but it was the Cardinals who won 3 pennants. They probably would have won a World Series if Don Denkinger didn't blow that call. But that shows a classy side of Whitey Herzog. When he had a reunion of that 85 team that blew the 3-1 lead to the Royals and were 3 outs away from winning the World Series, and Denkinger blew the famous call at first base, which in the age of instant replay would have been reversed. And Denkinger was vilified until, the Cardinals didn't win a World Series until 2006. But during one of the reunions of the 85 Cardinals, they had a golf tournament that Whitey Herzog had a bunch of the players come out there. And one of the people who spoke to the Cardinals was Denkinger from Herzog's invitation to basically say, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And while you can't mention the 85 Cardinals in that World Series without mentioning Denkinger's name, Herzog said, let's make peace with this. Rest in peace to the Hall of Famer Whitey Herzog, who helped define 1980s baseball and show that he was a man who, do you know what? He may have been as much of a giant off the field as he was on. Hey, let's talk to our friends over at FanDuel. You know about FanDuel? That's the place you want to go to. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, we're seeing the NBA playoffs are going to begin. Sorry, Warriors, your season's over. But it's the best time if you're going to vote for or bet on the playoffs, whether it's the NHL, the NBA, or baseball's in full swing. New customers get $150 of bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on anything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe and secure and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. This is a quick reminder that Locked On has the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local extras of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channel app. Carl Erskine also died today. He was 97 years old. Carl Erskine is a direct link to a era of baseball which is fading further and further away into obscurity. He was one of the last remaining members of the World Series champion Brooklyn Dodgers. And with the memories of the Dodgers existing in Brooklyn becoming fainter and fainter, and the fact that Erskine was such a great hero on those teams and a great representative of those teams, it just helps destroy that illusion that baseball is timeless. The past, present, future aren't really happening all at once. Erskine pitched in 5 World Series through a couple of no-hitters along the way, and he was a huge World Series hero. In the 1953 World Series, he set the record for most strikeouts in a single game from a starting pitcher with 14. That was passed later by Sandy Koufax and Bob Gibson, but those are 2 pretty good names to pass you along the way. He was a key member of the team that won the World Series in 1955 and a beloved member of those teams. He was an all-star. He did everything you would want, but he was also a person of intense integrity. He was one of the close friends of Jackie Robinson on those teams, and Jackie noted that Erskine was one of the first players to not only embrace him, but be welcoming to his own family. Erskine tells a story about how he greeted Rachel Robinson and Jackie's son in front of other people before a game in a way that some of Jackie's teammates were not doing in 1947. And when Jackie thanked him for showing his family the dignity that a lot of other people wouldn't show him, Erskine showed his true colors, saying he didn't care about the color of anyone's skin. He grew up in a pretty integrated section of Indiana, and it never meant anything to him. He just was going to treat everyone with dignity, which is, I don't know, isn't that what we're supposed to do? But it was more than that we saw the type of person he was. He was a representative of the Dodgers on many charitable organizations, and he also was a big advocate for the Special Olympics. His son, Jimmy, was diagnosed with Down syndrome. He was given a short life expectancy, according to the article in MajorLeagueBaseball.com, and he lived to the age of 63. And Erskine supported things like the Special Olympics and many other organizations that were inclusive of people who were born differently. It's no accident I'm picking this shirt that I'm wearing today, as I am a special education teacher. And I see that there are kids who are treated differently because of things that they can't control, like his son Jimmy with the Down syndrome. I've taught many kids with Down syndrome or on the extreme end, the severe end of the autism spectrum. And to know that there are people out there who use their fame, who use their popularity to help elevate and give dignity to kids who may have fallen between the cracks or may be ignored or ridiculed or treated as a sympathy case instead of someone who you should celebrate. I went to a Special Olympics event just a couple of weeks ago, and it's marvelous because you see the kids competing and having a moment where they get to be an athlete and not a source of sympathy. And that is something that a good man like Carl Erskine was able to use his fame and his popularity and his respect throughout baseball to help elevate many, many years after he threw his final pitch. Man, we lost Carl Erskine and Whitey Herzog in the same day. It's going to be a rough year making the next in memoriam video, but rest in peace, Mr. Erskine. Rest in peace, Mr. Herzog. And can we please slow down on the deaths a little bit, please? I want to just talk about baseball. Hey, the trivia question is this. Going back to Whitey Herzog, before he hit pay dirt with the Kansas City Royals, he briefly managed the California Angels and the Texas Rangers. While he wasn't doing badly as the manager of the Texas Rangers, he was fired before the season ended because the owner of the Rangers said, I would fire my own mother to bring in this manager. Who was the manager that replaced Whitey Herzog because the owner of the Rangers couldn't wait to hire him and was willing to throw Whitey Herzog away? Who did the Rangers bring in because they were lusting after this manager instead of Whitey Herzog? Put your answers right down here on YouTube or put it at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. Bidding farewell to Whitey Herzog and Carl Erskine and saying you're welcome to Toronto. This has been Locked On MLB for the 17th day of April, 2024. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.